The entire city of New York was shaken when billionaire Arthur Sterling suddenly vanished. Police searched everywhere. The media broadcast emergency reports around the clock. No one knew where the most powerful man in America had gone. But no one could have imagined he was standing right in the middle of Manhattan, wearing the torn, filthy clothes of a homeless garbage collector. And in that exact moment, an arrogant restaurant manager slapped him across the face in front of a crowd. "Get out of here, you filthy bum." No one stepped in to help him, except for one poor young woman who gave him the last piece of bread she had. But seconds later, a convoy of black limousines longer than the entire street came rushing in. Dozens of bodyguards stepped out, and the manager who had just hit the old man finally realized he had just slapped billionaire Arthur Sterling. New York, the city of money. Towering glass skyscrapers stretched into the sky like monuments to power and ambition. And in that city, there was one man who held the fate of tens of thousands in his hands. Arthur Sterling, real estate tycoon, owner of Sterling Global, a billionaire the media called the heartless predator, a man without mercy. Arthur had everything: private jets, mansions from New York to London, private dinners with presidents and billionaires. But deep inside, he was completely alone. After the death of his wife, Mary Sterling, Arthur began to see the world through cold, emotionless eyes. He locked himself away on the top floor of Sterling Tower. Every day, he stared down at the people below like ants fighting over scraps of profit. He no longer believed in kindness. Arthur believed people are only good when they are comfortable, or when they want something in return. But the thing that hurt Arthur the most wasn't loneliness. It was betrayal. 1 week earlier, he accidentally overheard his grandson, Julian Sterling, speaking with the family lawyer, declare him mentally unfit. Julian's voice was ice cold. "That old man is just a breathing pile of money." Arthur stood behind the door, frozen. The person he loved most was simply waiting for him to die so he could take over the empire. That night, Arthur removed his Patek Philippe watch, took off his custom-made Seville rose suit worth tens of thousands of dollars, and dressed himself in the dirty clothes of a homeless man. Then he disappeared. No note, no security, no money. Arthur wanted to find something money could never buy: a real human soul. The journey of art began beneath a bridge in the Bronx. On the very first night, the brutal New York winter nearly stole the breath from his lungs. He had never lived like this before, never been hungry, never slept on the street, never been looked at with disgust. Arthur curled up in a dark corner when an older man slowly approached him. Joe, a forgotten war veteran abandoned by society. Joe didn't ask who Art was. He simply ripped his old wool blanket in half and tossed one piece toward Arthur. "Take it, old man." Joe's rough voice trembled in the cold. "If you don't, they'll be collecting your body tomorrow morning." Arthur stared at him in shock. A man who had nothing was willing to give away half of the last thing he owned. Over the next several days, Arthur lived among the homeless. He watched them split loaves of bread with one another. He watched them give coats to people sicker than themselves. Meanwhile, wealthy elites in Manhattan spent thousands of dollars on bottles of wine. Then one snowy night, Joe started coughing violently. He had no medicine, no insurance. No one came to help. Arthur held Joe beneath the falling snow, but the old veteran died in his arms. The next morning, Arthur watched the coroner's van drive away, and for the first time in years he cried. He realized one bottle of wine he once drank at a dinner party could have saved 10 men like Joe. Later, Arthur met Martha, a blind schoolteacher living in an abandoned market. Every evening, she told fairy tales to shoeshine children. Even though nobody paid her, Arthur asked, "Why do you still do this?" Martha smiled gently. "Because if poor people stop believing in kindness too," she said softly, "then darkness will swallow this world whole." Those words slowly began breaking apart the ice surrounding Arthur Sterling's heart. Several weeks later, Arthur moved into a rundown apartment building in Queens. And there, he met Elena Rivera, 24 years old, waitress, working 2 jobs every day, 3 months behind on rent. Her mother desperately needed heart surgery, but Elena still helped others whenever she could. That night, Arthur pretended to collapse beside the trash bins behind her restaurant. People walked right past him. No one stopped, except Elena. She knelt beside him immediately. "Sir, can you hear me?" Her voice trembled with concern. "Please hang on, my apartment is close by." Elena helped Arthur back to her tiny apartment. The room was cramped. Paint peeled from the walls. The smell of hospital medicine lingered in the air. But it was clean, warm, peaceful. Elena gave Arthur the only bed in the apartment. While she sat against the wall all night watching over her feverish mother, Arthur looked at the young woman silently. For the first time in many years, he felt something that resembled family. Over the following days, Arthur continued pretending to be an old homeless man named Art. At night, he worked alongside Elena cleaning office buildings. One evening, a drunk young executive intentionally spilled red wine across the floor, then threw a $100 bill at Elena. "Clean it up," he smirked arrogantly. "Think of it as a tip." Elena calmly wiped the floor clean. Then she picked up the money and placed it back on the table. "Your money can buy my time," she said while looking directly into his eyes. "But it cannot buy my self-respect." Arthur stood quietly behind her. Something deep inside his chest shook. He knew this was the person he had been searching for. But not everyone admired Elena's integrity. Mark Benson, the restaurant manager, greedy, cruel, corrupt. He hated the fact that Elena refused to bow to him. One night, Mark stole a customer's diamond ring, then secretly slipped it into Elena's purse. Afterward, he cornered her inside his office. "If you want me to stay quiet," Mark grinned wickedly, "then become my mistress." Elena's face turned pale. "Your mother needs surgery, doesn't she?" He stepped closer. "I can save her." Elena burst into tears. But even through the pain, her eyes remained fierce and determined. "I would rather stay poor," she whispered shakily, "than sell my soul to the devil." Mark exploded with rage. He called the police. Elena suddenly faced prison. That same night, Arthur decided to test her one final time. He brought home a wallet stuffed with cash. "Take it," Arthur said. "Run away with your mother." Elena stared at the money with trembling hands. It was enough to save her mother. Enough to save her entire future. But after several seconds of silence, she pushed the wallet back toward him. "This money doesn't belong to us." Tears streamed down her face. "I can't build my mother's happiness on somebody else's pain." Arthur froze. In that moment, he knew the test was over. The next morning, Mark arrived at the apartment complex with police officers to arrest Elena. Neighbors stood outside helplessly watching. Elena clung to her mother, crying uncontrollably. Mark smiled proudly. "Take her away." But suddenly, the sound of engines thundered through the street. Everyone turned around. A convoy of sleek black limousines rolled into the slum neighborhood. So many cars that they nearly filled the entire block. The doors opened. Dozens of bodyguards stepped out. Men in black suits immediately secured the area. Mark went pale. Then an assistant walked directly toward the homeless old man and bowed deeply. "Mr. Chairman," he said respectfully, "everything is ready." The entire neighborhood froze. Arthur slowly straightened his back. Gone was the weak posture of the old garbage collector. His eyes became sharp and terrifying. The aura of a powerful empire suddenly swallowed the entire street. Mark stumbled backward. I. Arthur looked at him like he was nothing more than an insect. "You tried to send my daughter to prison?" Mark's face lost all color. "Why your daughter?" Arthur stepped closer. "I am Arthur Sterling." His voice was cold enough to send chills through the air. And today, he stared directly into Mark's terrified eyes. "Your life ends." Within 24 hours, Mark lost everything. His accounts were frozen. He was fired from the restaurant. His reputation collapsed. Overnight. But Arthur didn't throw him onto the streets. Instead, he sent Mark to a rehabilitation center where he would perform community labor. "There are some lessons," Arthur said calmly, "that only poverty can teach." Arthur brought Elena's mother to the best hospital in New York. The surgery was successful. He purchased the old apartment building where Elena had lived and transformed it into free housing for struggling families. He also bought the restaurant where Elena once worked, then fired the entire toxic management system. Several months later, Arthur officially adopted Elena as his daughter and placed her in charge of the Mary Sterling Foundation. Elena transformed the Sterling Empire into the largest humanitarian network in New York. Affordable housing, free schools, shelters for the homeless. The shoeshine children finally had a chance to study, and people like Joe no longer died on the streets without medicine. One evening, Arthur and Elena stood together on the rooftop of Sterling Tower, looking down at the glowing city below. Arthur smiled softly at a photograph of Mary. "Finally," he whispered, I understand what you wanted from me. Elena looked at him. What do you mean? Arthur gazed at the lights stretching across the city. True wealth, he said slowly, is when the world becomes a better place simply because you existed in it. The night wind swept gently through the rooftop rose garden. The scent of flowers drifted through the air. And for the first time in many years, Arthur Sterling felt his heart alive again. Money can buy power, but it can never buy kindness. A homeless man can possess more compassion than a billionaire. And a poor young woman can have a character that money could never purchase in a lifetime. If this story touched your heart, please like and subscribe to help us continue sharing meaningful stories like this one. And leave a comment. Backhand index pointing right. Kindness is the greatest wealth to help spread this message of compassion to more people around the world. Thank you for staying with us until the end. We'll see you again in the next untold story, here on Unheard Truths America.